Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to make a 2024 presidential bid official next week. But he's been dealt a heavy blow with Disney's recent decision to scrap plans to build a $1 billion office complex in Orlando that was expected to bring more than 2,000 jobs with an average salary of $120,000. Our rising panel joins us now to weigh in. Steve Olikara is a former U.S. Senate candidate for Wisconsin and founder of the Millennial Action Project. And Seth Higgins is a Krauthammer fellow. Great to have you both with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
So Seth, I want to bring you in here. What do you make of this ongoing beef, the drama between DeSantis and Disney? Is it going to hurt his chances with Republicans, this loss of business and jobs in Orlando, or do you think they care more about the political fight of Disney being against the Don't Say Gay bill? What do you make of it?
This Disney battle between Ron DeSantis is quickly turning into DeSantis's mission accomplished moment. He came out strong, he came out hard, he came out heavy against Disney over some of their cultural positions and quickly claimed victory. But it's becoming readily apparent that this is a more complicated battle than he anticipated, and Disney has been nipping at his heels ever since. And crucially, this really opens up an opportunity for some of the third-tier Republican candidates to attack Disney as being anti-business, being anti-economic development. So while I don't think this is necessarily going to define the 2024 campaign, I don't think this is necessarily going to define Disney, this is going to become a political quagmire.
Yeah, and to your point about the third-tier candidates being able to use this as a political wedge issue, Nikki Haley said that South Carolina would be happy to bring Disney jobs in to help her state. She was the governor there. But I wonder, is it time for Republicans and conservatives to maybe start thinking less about the economic ramifications of corporate decisions and more about the cultural decisions? Because is it not that sort of bottom line beats all attitude that got us to this point in the first place where corporations have gone woke?
Yeah, I would disagree with that framing. I think Disney actually wasn't thinking about their bottom line. They were thinking about engaging in a cultural battle. And Disney has received blowback for this as well. Now, Disney's a large corporation. They're going to come through this just fine. But it's really hard to engage in a cultural war through economic policy. So I think DeSantis's initial engagement in this Disney battle through kind of economic tools was kind of too clever by half. It seemed too cute, too quick, and he claimed victory too soon. And this has serious ramifications going forward.
Steve, I want to bring you in here. The mission accomplished analogy, just the mental image of George W. Bush with the banner, that's really how it felt when DeSantis said, all right, we're going to call an emergency session. We're going to take away Disney's self-governing status. And then it turns out there's some legislation that would very clearly prevent that and actually require the governor to raise income taxes on Floridians, which they would hate if they were to take over Reedy Creek, Disney's municipality, their bonds, right? It created this whole mess. What do you make of the mess and the mission accomplished moment from DeSantis?
I think that's right. I think that Governor DeSantis has gotten too much into cuteness, to use the word that Seth was mentioning, instead of governing. This has real implications on the ground. As you mentioned, the taxes would be spread out across the two counties in the area. And that's not something they really looked into before they actually pushed this. And that's part of a larger trend you see in politics, especially those aspiring to win their presidential primaries, is engaging in this case, what I would call a form of conservative wokeness. When you think about the Don't Say Gay bill, banning books, critical race theory, these are all things that Governor DeSantis was doing to evoke a certain emotional response, specifically in the activist primary electorate that he would have to appeal to in a presidential race. And the flip side of that is it's not great for governing in Florida. We saw a similar example in Wisconsin where Scott Walker was getting ready to run for president. He did a number of things that he thought would play well nationally, but his approval dropped in the state of Wisconsin. So I would expect to see a similar thing start to happen in Florida.
We're going to jump to another topic. Meanwhile, Democrats are racing to avoid embarrassment in New Hampshire as an obscure state law threatens Joe Biden's placement on the ballot there. The president may be forced to concede primaries in the Granite State after Democrats push to make South Carolina the first primary state. Also, in a memo released yesterday, the Biden re-election campaign insisted there are, quote, a number of viable pathways to the 270 electoral votes for the president, and that the campaign will engage early and often with women, Black, Hispanic, Asian American, and young voters. As both parties shore up their 2024 strategies, new analysis offered up by the Washington Post finds that Republicans have not fared well at the ballot box in several election cycles since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, a sign that the issue could come to haunt the GOP in 2024. Steve, I want to start by getting your take on the Biden folly, I guess, in New Hampshire. Do you think it's possible that they could end up with some egg on their face?
They probably will, because from the beginning, this was a purely political decision, essentially a backroom deal that was struck to reward South Carolina because it was in many ways the kingmaker for Joe Biden back in the 2020 race. And you see that New Hampshire Democrats are extremely upset about this situation, and they have a state law that will require them to have the first primary. So Joe Biden will have to make a pretty big decision here. And my advice to his team would be to at least be on the ballot, if not campaign there, because you don't want to have a huge embarrassment where one of the other candidates outperforms him, which would actually be a relapse of 2020 when he also did quite poorly. So this is going to be some egg in his face, but at the same time, it'll be 1 or 2 news cycles, and then people will move on, I think, pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, whenever I think about the 2020 primary, I think about, Biden not doing well in New Hampshire, in Iowa, and then having a phone call go out, rumored by Obama, calling a bunch of candidates, asking them to drop out and endorse Joe Biden. We're in a bit of a different political landscape now with RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson. Seth, what do you make of how the Democratic Party has run their primary election process? To me, it feels like they're really putting their thumb on the scale for the establishment Democrat candidate that they want. And that seems to hurt their prospects in the long run, right? Losing the trust of their base, who maybe preferred other candidates. Bernie Sanders was doing quite well then. I have a bias towards Bernie, but Seth, what do you make of it?
Yeah, Jessica, I think you have a point, and it's important to look at recent history. If Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires, New Hampshire is the graveyard of incumbent presidents. In 1968, LBJ got 48% of the vote against McCarthy's 42. In 80, Carter got 51 against Kennedy's 38. And in 92, Bush got 58 against Buchanan's 40. So New Hampshire is the canary in the coal mine for an incumbent president who's facing disaster. The last thing Biden needs to do is fool around in New Hampshire and give an opening to RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson to capture 30% of the vote and drive home a narrative that Biden is weak and he is under threat.
Let me go back to you, Seth, for this issue of abortion. We know that Republicans' pro-life position of life at conception is not overwhelmingly popular with the American populace. But I think it would be probably a betrayal to their base to also say that they're going to take the Trump approach, which is that there should be no federal solution whatsoever. So what do you think the right response is for threading that needle? Is it a 15-week ban, which is more popular? Is it 6 weeks like DeSantis signed in Florida? How do Republicans stay loyal pro-lifers while also not losing a huge segment of the electorate, particularly women?
What Republicans have to do here is understand that they really need to get as much in terms of policy victories as possible, where possible, when possible. So I don't think pushing for federal regulation in terms of abortion is the correct strategy. This is really a state-by-state, locality-by-locality battle. And more importantly than in terms of, 15 versus 12 versus 9 versus 6-week ban, Republicans, really need to lead with their heart on this issue. They can come across sounding incredibly callous. They need to make it incredibly clear that their heart goes out to any woman who finds themselves in a challenging situation. And they have a bad history of putting forward candidates who talk about this issue in really crass, rude ways that many women find disrespectful, even women who might be sympathetic to their point of view. So 1, take the victories where you can. 2, lead with your heart. Be sensitive. This is a personal issue.
Thank you so much for joining us, Seth Higgins and Steve Olikara. It's been good having a bit of a Brady Bunch panel, all of us weighing in on this. Thanks for being here. We've got more Rising for you all after this.